Alright, back again for another one. This one's off the top, of course. I don't have anything written down. I like to do my videos that way. I feel like more authentic. Though I probably will get into a little bit of list making in the future, maybe. But for now, I'll do off top. I don't have the energy to want to sit down and jot down my thoughts. But anyways, so today's topic is going to be lost my train of thought. It's been such a long day. I just want to sit down and chill out, but I gotta get this off my mind. Today's topic is going to be about competition. There are a lot of ways to compete in this world. We compete for jobs. We compete for mate selection. We compete for raffles. We compete at carnivals, playing little games and whatnot. There are many ways we compete in this world, but I want to talk about a more specific competition that people seem to confuse, and oftentimes they, I guess you can say, they prioritize what competition that they should be in, or I guess you can say they misunderstand what kind of competition they should be in versus the one that they say they're in and that they're pursuing. They look at it totally wrong. But what I mean is the competition with others to be the best at something, or any of those genres that I mentioned. You can be the best basketball player. You can be the best athlete. You can be the best musician. You can be the best. I mean, a lot of these things are subjective. Being the best musician, it's kind of subjective because it's based on the audience that you have. Sorry about the jiggling. I got my phone mountain up there and it's not secure, so bear with me. But anyways, while these things are good for growth, they oftentimes get prioritized over the reason why you're competing in the first place. A lot of people think they're competing to be acknowledged by others as being the first or the best, but they totally forget about why they competed in the first place. They didn't compete for the accolades from others most times. By the way, I'm talking from personal experience. These are my thoughts of how I view life and how I conceptualize what I see in my environment. So don't take this as a dogmatic way of thinking, like I've said plenty of times before. This isn't law, but it's something to think about. But anyways, people compete, for all these things, and they forget the reason why they're competing in the first place. They're competing for themselves. How I mean this is, say you want to be the best musician, you compare yourself to others, but to get the most out of being the best, compare yourself to your ability. That's how you're going to get the most. If you say within yourself, I could be doing this better, or I could be, spending more time on my craft. I can be doing this or doing that. When you compete with yourself, that's your biggest competition, and that's where you're going to get your biggest growth, because in your mind there's always a better you. But when you compete with other people, you can easily outclass them sometimes based on how good you are at your craft. This is the reason why you see a lot of people who, I'll give you an example for artists. You know, they come out with their first CD and they're not necessarily competing with anybody, because for the people that do take off, it's usually a craft that is very unique. They have a unique sound. They have a unique way of presenting their art. They're not competing with anybody else. They're competing with themselves. That's the reason why they come out with such great music for their first go around, because they're not competing with anybody. But when they get thrown in the rat race, then they get sized up against other people and they say, oh, this person is a whole lot better. What do you think about this person? Who's your top five, etc., etc. And that's why I believe it gets murky for them, because they stop competing with themselves and started competing with each other. It's easy to hit a goal mark when you compete with other people. It's very, very difficult to hit a goal mark when you compete with yourself, because you can always imagine a better version of yourself. I see this a lot within the Manosphere. Not per se in the way that you may think. I see this as people are competing, you know, to create content, to get the most videos, you know, to get the most views, to get the most, I guess you can say, excuse that, I'm sitting in my car, of course. I guess you can say get the most clout. But I guarantee you, if a lot of those content creators go back into the reason why they started their content, they can say that it was for themselves. I mean, we oftentimes, I'm not a believer in self-sacrifice. I don't believe in that at all. The reason why is because you can always, even if you sacrifice your life for someone else, you did it because you wanted to do it. It was your will and desire. So therefore, they call it selfless service in the military. I don't believe in selfless service. I think the highest form of sacrifice a person can make is to give their lives for someone else, because that's in game completely. Although I still believe there is a small bit of selfishness in there, because you have to have some desire to do that within yourself to start with in order to get to the point where you do sacrifice yourself for someone else. Everything that makes you great starts with you. Everything that makes you great will end with you. This is something that a lot of people should think about. I personally, have experienced this in my lifetime, where I would compare myself to other people. But people do what they do for different reasons than my own. For that reason alone, not to mention many others, you shouldn't be in competition with anyone else, because their reason for doing whatever they're doing could be completely different from yours. I mean, to a very minute form. This person may want a lot of views and you may want a lot of views, but they might want a lot of views because they seek money. But you might want a lot of views because you seek to get your message out. So even though you may have the same surface level goal, the internal goals are completely different. And let's keep it real. No one is really going to tell you heartfelt all of their desires, all of the reasons why they do the things that they are doing or have done. No one's going to be completely honest about those things. So for that fact, those facts alone, you shouldn't compete with anybody else. I'm not saying that you should be slacking and, doing this, etc. But if you're competing with yourself, if you can see a better version of yourself, then there is no other greater opponent. And this will help you drive yourself forward, because you can always see yourself in a greater light than you already see yourself. So, I would charge you as the individual to not look at the competition between you and another person. That's not important at all. It can be sometimes entertaining, but for the most part, you should strive to compete with yourself. compete with what you view yourself as compared to what you could be. Compete with that. Compete with your past. You're competing with your past now. You can look back and you could say, I used to be, this and that, and I don't want to go back down that road. You're in competition with yourself. And that's pushing you to not want to be like you were. So, like I said, I would charge you all to compete with yourselves. For there is no greater opponent and there is no greater lesson to be learned when it comes to competition. But anyways, this has been the Wolf, and may the close. Peace be with you, and may you all have a good